Hello, Lake Oboe section. I'm here today to talk to you about a few things that will help you while you're distance learning during this time. The topics today are going to be reeds, embouchure, common bad habits that most of you probably don't have, but we'll go over them today for you anyway, and how to fix them. Warm-ups, and I'll go through how I warm up and how I practice when I'm at home. The importance of air support. And then I'm going to show you some pictures and some things from my reed making studio, which is where I am recording this right now. So first thing, let's talk about our reeds. I know that most of you transfer to oboe, or switch to the oboe rather, from clarinet, and you get ready for band and you put your reed in your mouth to get it wet as you're assembling your instrument and getting ready for the band to start. Well, most of you don't do this, except I know Mason does. You really need to soak your reeds in water. So they need to soak for about 5 minutes before they're ready to play. So the best thing to do is put it in water, and then while you're putting your instrument together and getting your music ready, your reed is soaking. It's best to use warm water, which you can't usually do at school because it takes forever for the warm water to come out of my sink, but use cold water and some kind of soaking vessel. What you can get are glass. I use the glass ones at home because I don't want them to break, but this is a really nice one because it's at an angle. I only put a little bit of water in, and the thread doesn't get wet. Some of you have seen this one. I had this at school. This is a little shot glass that actually glows in the dark, which is kind of cool. What you want to get though is something that has a lid. You can use an old pill bottle. Make sure you clean it out first. Best rule of thumb though is if you put water, it just needs a little bit because you don't need to soak it all the way to the thread. And after band or after you're done practicing, empty it, because if you store this in your oboe case, sometimes they leak, especially pill bottles. They're not always sealing all the way. And then the best thing is if you have a parent or maybe a grandparent that used to use film. This 35mm film canister seals really well. You can leave water in it. Sometimes they leak, but it's best to empty it. But if you don't have time to throw out your water, these usually seal pretty well, and put them in the pocket of your oboe case. These are my favorite, but they're hard to find nowadays since everything's digital. So once your reed is soaked, you want to crow the reed by itself to see if it's soaked enough. And ideally, you're going to get two pitches with your oboe reed. You're going to get that high pitch and that low kind of gravelly pitch. If you don't get those sounds, put it back in the water. And if you miss the first couple minutes of warm up at school when you're in band, that's okay. Something that's a little bit different from oboe than all the other instruments. Let's see. So we talked about the crow. Once you are the reed is crowing and you want to go through your warm-ups, we'll get to that later because I want to talk about a couple other things first. Let's talk about your embouchure formation. Because all of you are doublers and you still are playing your switch instruments, Kylie's playing the flute and the rest of you switch from clarinet, it's completely different from when you play the oboe. So what I want you to do to form your embouchure is to make your lips in the formation like you're going to whistle, and then pull them in, and that's where your reed is going to go. You want to cushion your reed from all around like a circle or a drawstring bag, so you want to support the reed from all sides. When you're playing your oboe, if you ever look in the mirror, you shouldn't see any of this red part of your lip while you're playing. If you do, you need to maybe reset your embouchure, and always remember to bring your corners in. Flute players play more this way. Clarinet players have a different embouchure, and their chin's firm, and then their embouchure is slightly different, and you're blowing through a lot bigger hole than you are in the oboe. Your lips always need to be over your teeth, and there should be a space between your teeth when you play. You shouldn't play with your teeth completely closed. There always should be a little bit of space so you can get the air to go through. Some of the bad habits that happen with oboe players, it's not a huge problem with most of you, but particularly because most of you switch from clarinet, you're used to playing your pinky keys on both the right and the left side. Now, the flute players don't have any left side keys except one little A flat key, but you need to learn how to use both these side keys equally. It will help your technique in the long run. A couple of you have this left side F key, and I know some of you use it and some of you do not. If you have not been using it, I want you to try when you practice at home. In place of your forked F, start using the left side F. I know that it may feel awkward, but it's really important that you start using that. All of you have a left side E flat key, which you need to start using as well. So E flat and F, if you have it, are the two keys I really want you to focus on when you're practicing during this time. I'm talking about that F. There are 3 fingerings for F if you have that left side F key, and you need to be able to use all 3 or 2 if you only have 2 on your oboe. It will help you in the long run if you know which Fs to use, and if you know the tendencies of those Fs. The forked F usually tends to be a little bit stuffy and a little bit flatter, but you need to be able to use all those fingerings interchangeably. It will help your technique in the long run, especially when you're working on harder technical passages. Just a quick review next about the octave key mechanisms. There are 3 on the oboe. The first one is the half hole, which you all should be familiar with, and it's for the 3 Ds. So you have your half hole key at the top, and you use it on D, D flat, and D sharp, also known as C sharp and E flat. The correct way to use the half hole is not hopping. Hopefully none of you are doing this, but it's just a rolling. You shouldn't be hopping or leaping to that half hole. It's just if you keep your finger right in between, it should be able to roll. Helps if you angle your fingers on the oboe instead of straight like you do on the flute. Help with getting to the octave keys as well as moving that half hole back and forth. The first octave key on the back is for notes from E natural up to A flat or G sharp. The second octave key on the side is from A natural all the way up to high C. Some of you have a third octave key, which I will address this in a more advanced video later time. It's really, really nice to have, but we'll talk about those fingerings that apply just to those who have the oboe with the advanced key. Once you get higher than a C, then you kind of start over. Then you have some more half-hole fingerings, but those are also advanced techniques that we don't need to talk about in this review video today. Hand position, as I just mentioned, is important. It's similar to clarinet on the bottom, where your right hand is, but the top, the left hand should be slightly angled. And I know you angle your first finger on clarinet to get to that A key, but you need to angle your whole hand on the oboe to get the most comfortable and correct hand position. One of the biggest bad habits that oboe players have, especially young oboe players, is articulation. Especially all of you that are doublers. It's huge that you use the correct part of your tongue and touch the correct part of the reed with your tongue. So I want you to memorize this sentence. And this is the part of your tongue that touches the reed. The top tip of the tongue touches the underside tip of the reed. So what I'm talking about is when you're tonguing on the oboe, your tongue is going to touch this part, the underside tip of the reed, not flat on. This will sound thuddy, and it just does not make a very pretty sound. Now it's pretty dry today, so I'm re-wetting my reed before I need to play it again. And that's what you can do during band is if you have a cup of water and your reeds feel dry, you can stop during rehearsal and dip it back in the water and re-wet it instead of using it your mouth. The reason that it's bad to keep reeds in your mouth is that you have a lot of bacteria in your mouth that could essentially wear the reed out quicker. If you have a opportunity, it's best to brush your teeth before you play, but a lot of you cannot do that while you're at school. All right, getting back to the warm-ups. Things you should always do when you start your warm-ups is start with long tones. You can play your scales and whole notes or just play some random long tones just to get things working and making sure your reed is in good soaking position or make sure the sides are closed. It's a good idea to practice long tones in octaves with a tuner. You can, if you don't have a tuner, there's lots of tuner apps on your smart devices that you can download. So I practice a lot of octaves. I usually start with D, play D for 4 beats, and then play the next high D, and the next high one, if you know all 3. Otherwise, just practice just a full octave, starting with D, maybe going up to G. The reason you're doing this is so you can start learning the tendencies of the pitches on your oboe. All oboes have a general pitch tendency. The notes that are lower below the staff typically are flat. The notes that are within the staff are usually pretty close to being in tune. There's a few exceptions. And then the high notes have a tendency to be sharp. If you are a player that is flat all the time, that means that you are probably not using enough air support. So if you're pretty much your entire range of your oboe sounds flat, then you need to work on air support, which we'll talk to you a little bit more later on in this video. There are some notes on the oboe that are slightly out of tune, and the pitch tendencies, interesting enough, are opposite. For example, the E natural on the oboe tends to be sharp, where the E on the flute is a note that tends to be flat. So sometimes you have polar opposites of what notes are in tune. You're sitting next to the flute player and you're trying to tune, and you have opposite tendencies. So you need to know these things to help you become a better oboe player and to sound better and to blend better with the rest of the band. Alright, so let me talk you through what a typical practice session is for me. Like I said, I start with long tones, and then I have a pretty big, extensive scale sheet that has all 12 major minor scales. I usually will pick one page, and there's 2 different keys on it. It goes through the scale, the major scale and minor scale in thirds, and then it goes through some arpeggios, not just the major arpeggios. It goes through C minor and diminished and dominant, things that we haven't even learned yet, and then it goes through both the major and minor keys in thirds. So I'll play through all of this, and then I'll play through all of this after my long tones, and then I'll just stick with those 2 keys for a certain practice session. After I do that, I typically will go through one of my method books. This is one I used in college when I was an undergrad, and it goes through all kinds of scale studies, different meters, different articulations, and this just helps your overall technique. After that, after I work on those for a little while, I will either go through orchestral excerpts, things that I learned at college. I don't really play in an orchestra right now, but sometimes it's fun just to play through pieces that are famous, that are, Beethoven or Mozart, stuff like that. Just like at our school, the concert that I was supposed to play in with the concert band up here in Monroe got canceled. And this is one of the songs. I know it's backwards, but it's called Midway March. It's super hard. So we're going to play the same concert next May. So I decided, well, while I'm home, I'm going to work on some of this because it's really, really hard. And then when I finish working on any kind of orchestra excerpts or band music that I have, if I'm getting ready to play for a show, which I do a lot, about 6 a year, 6 to 10 a year, I might go through and work on the music for the pit orchestra, whatever on the side. As far as I know, these 2 books that I have right now, I think they're both been canceled. I haven't officially heard yet, but because of all of the closings, they're probably not going to be able to have their musicals. So that's what my practice session looks like. So yours should look similar: long tones, scales, band music, and then if you have any kind of music that you think you just want to do for fun, that's always something that you can do at the end. Make sure you get through all of your required things that you should do every time you practice first before you go on to any of the more fun music. And you can find lots of music online. I found several things on YouTube that gives you the notes and you can kind of play along with them, or sometimes you can find some free music online as well. Alright, last thing I'm going to do today is show you some of the equipment that I use to make your reeds. First of all, this is what the oboe cane looks like. It comes in these tubes. It's actually a reed grass that grows in warm climates in France and Italy. And I buy it by the kilo. And this is a bunch that I bought a couple months ago. This is, I think it's about 2.5 pounds. It was about $200. So I take that tube of cane, and I have a piece of equipment called a splitter. It splits it into 3 pieces, and then those pieces are taken and put through this machine. This is one of my favorite parts of reed making. It's a guillotine. So I put the reed in there and I chop its head off. Not really, but it cuts it to length. Once that happens, I might just do some cane and just have a bunch of cut pieces. And then when I get ready to make reeds out of them, it needs to go through this little machine. It's not really a machine. You just put the cane in here and you push it through. It gets all the thickness off the top so that the next step is a lot easier. So the next thing that happens to the reeds, it goes to this machine. This is called a gouging machine. So the cane goes in this bed on the gouging machine, and then I crank this around and it comes out this side. And you do this a couple times till it gets to be really thin. And I have a couple different tools I measure that with. This is a handheld micrometer, so I measure the thickness of the cane. And this is my favorite tool. I use this for many, many stages of reed making. And I also have another micrometer that sits on a stand, and I use this one as well. But the handheld one is really, really helpful. I use that all the time. All right, after the cane has been gouged, next thing that has to happen is it needs to be shaped. So I have this. I'm holding against my shirt so you can see it. This is a shaper. As you can see, it's metal, but it's in the shape of the oboe reed. So I put the cane over this, and with a razor blade, I scraped on the sides, and then it comes up with a shaped piece of cane. Here's a bunch that's already done. Once it's shaped, it gets soaked, and then it gets tied onto these staples. And that's how I make your reeds. I worked on some yesterday. Decided to make some lake blue, so I worked on all these yesterday and tied them on. I had to shape them. I already had the cane gouged, so I just shaped them and I tied them onto these staples. When I get ready to scrape them, I used to make my reeds 100% by hand when I was in college. And now, because I have to make a lot of reeds for students and for myself, I have a machine that is called a profiling machine. So this is it. This was a very expensive machine. Bought this a couple years ago. But you put the reed on this blade. I don't know, it's hard to see. Put the reed here, and then with this knife, you shave it, and it takes probably about 3 days off of the work that I would normally do by hand. So once I run the reed on this machine, they usually start to crow. Once they're profiled, I let them dry until I'm ready to finish them. So I usually have some reeds that are in that stage, so when a student comes to me and says, I need a reed, normally it takes me 4 days to make a reed, but I already have some that are on day 4. So if you come up and say, Mrs. Jansen, I need a reed, then I can finish one usually pretty quickly by the next day if you ask me. On that note, if you need reeds while we're not in school, please just email me your address, and I will mail them to you. I'm working on some for Morgan. She had an online lesson the other day, and she only has one reed, so I'm working on reeds for her. And I know Kylie needs one, and Tyler, if you need one, please let me know, because I think you only have one as well. That is all I have to show you for now with my reed making. This is my basement. I have lots of thread, and there's some other stuff. The shelves over there, some duplicate things. What I want you to do, your assignment is going to be learning how to play with vibrato. And I've told a couple of you how to do this, but I found a video online that I'm going to send you the link for in the next few days that will help you learn vibrato. It's a little bit different than what I told you. You will need to have a metronome app. You can download that on your smart device or a computer, and then she's going to go through the steps with you. And it's something that I want you to try to do as part of your warm-up every day. It doesn't take very long, just do it for a couple minutes, and then you will see eventually that if you do it every day for a week and then stop, the vibrato will start to naturally come out in your playing. But the reason that you learn it with a metronome is that so you can turn it on and off, because clarinet players, you do not want to play with vibrato. It makes you sound really weird if you do, and flute players do want to use a vibrato, and it's the same technique that you play on the flute. But when you're playing in concert band, you don't want to have vibrato. You want to play a straight tone. But if you go to solo and ensemble and you play solos or small ensembles, you do want to have some vibrato because it adds to the tone color. Plus, all of you, I hope, will be auditioning for honor bands in the future, and it's a very desirable part of oboe playing if you can play with vibrato. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I guess I can show you a little bit. Straight tone versus vibrato. my straight tone, and this is with vibrato. So I can speed it up and slow it down depending on the music I'm playing to give it a lot more different tone colors than you would if you just played with straight tone all the time. One of my students up here in Michigan, she plays in an orchestra, a local youth orchestra, and they suggest to her all the time that she play with vibrato, but she does not take the time to practice. You have to do it every day for a week, then you can stop, and then wait another week and do it again, and then you would eventually be able to control it and turn it on and off. So that is all I have for you. Like I said, I'll be sending out the link for the vibrato lesson, but in the meantime, practice those long tones, practice your scales, and play louder. Use a lot of air support, because if you don't, you're going to be flat, and it's really hard to hear you unless you play with good air support and good sound. Happy oboeing! Thanks, everybody. Bye.